real parents, real stories. It's the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Meet the Parents podcast. It's our first edition of 2017 as we join you for another half an hour of parenting conversation from some of your favourite parent bloggers. I'm Tim from Slouching Towards Thatcham, and this evening I'm going to be talking with Hannah from Budding Smiles, Mark from Best Dad I Can Be, and the latest addition to our team, Simon from Man vs Pink. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Tim.
Good evening.
So on this week's podcast, we're going to introduce Simon. We'll look back on Christmas and share our highlights of 2016, and then have a quick look forward to what's in store for us in 2017. So, just like in football, January sees the transfer window open for the podcast team. Now, sadly, Dave from the Dadventurer has had to step back from being a regular on the podcast, although hopefully he'll still pop in occasionally for a guest appearance. But because it's written in the Meet the Parents podcast constitution that we must always have a stay-at-home dad from the Shires on the team, we've signed up the perfect replacement in Simon, who you may know as the writer behind the blog Man vs Pink.
Hello there.
Hi there. So, Simon, you've got quite an interesting and varied background, and you've literally lived on the other side of the world. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Okay, so I used to work in television before I got into fatherhood, the fatherhood game. My wife's from New Zealand, and we went to live out there for a few years in 2009. And I became a parent while we were out there in 2012. And when my daughter was 6 months old, we kind of made a decision that my wife wanted to go back to work and I would stay home with her, and it's been that way ever since.
As we mentioned, you blog over at Man vs Pink, and as the name suggests, your blog has a very distinct positioning. So tell us a little bit more about that.
The main thing behind the blog is kind of highlighting and tackling gender stereotypes in children, and most specifically girls. I have a daughter, and I am, as anyone who follows me knows, I'm very much a Star Wars fan and a superhero fan, comic book fan. And it kind of became clear quite early on that the things I liked were often labelled as boys' things to children. And I kind of grew increasingly frustrated with that. I was thinking back to it. I think the year our daughter was born was the year that Lego Friends started. And that was quite a conversation then around Lego was seen as a unisex thing, and then introducing the Lego Friends was almost labelling ordinary Lego boys Lego and Lego Friends girls Lego. And it's clearly not that simple, but it was just part of a conversation happening at the time. And I just kind of got more and more into it. I used to refer to individual bloggers at times about this, and I think I just eventually thought, I think one thing I was aware of was that my personal Facebook feed was just being taken up completely by sharing things about gendered marketing, and there's a great campaign called Let Toys Be Toys and sharing that stuff. And I just kind of thought, I bet a lot of my friends are really bored of just me posting this stuff all the time. So I just thought, why don't I just put that over into a blog? And then if anyone actually is interested in that, then they'll still follow me. And that was really how my blogging started, as a way of kind of hiving off that part of my just standard Facebook feed.
Cool. And yeah, I mean, for sure, the blog certainly stands out from the crowd. So finally, before we move on, just tell us one fact about yourself that people don't know.
Yes, I was trying to think this, and I couldn't really. I don't know if anyone doesn't know this, but I used to work in television, and my specialism was film-related television, movie-related television. So I've interviewed basically world-famous film stars quite regularly for about 10 years. My job was to sit in swanky hotel rooms and chat to movie stars for like 9 minutes at a time.
Yeah, a slight departure from being a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, but no less challenging, dealing with kind of stroppy Russell Crowe, for instance.
Absolutely. As we record this, it's now 2 weeks since Christmas. The decorations are down, the last of the turkey is long gone, at least hopefully it is, and many of us aren't speaking to our bathroom scales anymore. But before we march forward into 2017, let's look back on the ghost of Christmas past. So what did we all get up to over Christmas? So let's whiz around the team quickly. Mark, let's start with you. Just remind us how old your kids are, and then tell us a bit about how Christmas was for both you and for them.
Okay, so Dan's my eldest. He's 23 now. Eleanor, my beloved daughter, is 21. And Alex, the youngest, has just turned 18. So Dan and Ellie, Dan's working now. He's graduated. Ellie's doing a master's. But it was great to have them all home for Christmas. He said, reading from the parenting textbook, actually, they drank a huge quantity of my wine, and I seem to spend an entire Christmas as the catering department, with the exception of Christmas Day, which my wife does. But I'm afraid to say that Best Dad Wine Stocks, on the off chance that this podcast is sponsored by a wine company, have taken a savage beating over the Christmas period.
Yeah, I must get in touch with Majestic Wine.
Yeah, you must, Tim, you must.
Did you manage your Christmas afternoon walk on the beach?
I think Christmas morning, my walks on the beach are conditioned by the tide. So it was low tide, I think sort of 7 o'clock Christmas morning. So that's when it was. But yeah, everything's conditional on the tide here.
What would you say your one highlight and one low light of Christmas were?
Well, my wife, we've been married, it's coming up to 24 years now. So my wife gave me a toilet roll holder.
Romantic. So
decide whether that's a highlight or a low light yourselves. We went away for a weekend away, our wedding anniversary. We stayed at a lovely place in Middleham in the Yorkshire Dales, and they had in the bathroom these fantastic toilet roll holders, which were made from. Oh, I'm going to have to photograph this and tweet it now, aren't I? Which were made from old cobblers' lasts. So my wife found one. She searched the internet and found one. So we now have this most fantastic toilet roll holder based on an antique cobbler's thingy. So you decide whether getting a bog brush holder from your wife is highlight or low light, you know.
Should we say it has an element of both and leave it to our listeners to decide?
Quite so. And what that says about the state of my marriage, well, I'll leave it to any psychoanalysts who are listening to phone in and give me advice.
I'll plead the fifth on that one. So, Hannah, same questions for you. So just remind us how old Toby and Martha are, and then just talk us through their Christmas experience.
My kids are slightly younger. Toby is 2.5, just turned, and Martha was 7.5 months by Christmas. So it was the first Christmas out of Toby's 3 to date that he was really sort of starting to understand what was going on. He knew that Father Christmas was going to come. He knew he was going to get presents. He knew not to take everything off the Christmas tree, otherwise Mummy would get very upset with him. And it was really, really lovely because he was really starting to get involved with it. Martha just enjoyed the twinkly lights and smiling at everybody, really, which is basically Martha in a nutshell all year round, to be honest. So it was really, really nice. And on Christmas morning itself, Toby came running into our room at 6 a.m. as normal, and he was saying, you know, has Santa been, has Father Christmas been? And so Phil went downstairs. He said, I'll just go see if Father Christmas is here. So Phil went downstairs and then jingled his bells to signify that Father Christmas was there, and Toby got really excited about it. We'd put some reindeer food out in the garden the night before, so we had to go check if the reindeer had that. And then when he saw his stocking, his whole face lit up, and he's, Mummy, Daddy, my stocking, there's presents. And so he thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was just really, really nice knowing that this is our family now. It's the 4 of us, and this is sort of a little snippet of what's to come, really. So it was lovely.
I can't cope with that. I'm feeling all broody now. That's awful. I used to love that. Oh, I used to love that when they'd burst into the lounge and shout, "He's been, he's been." Oh,
It's so sweet.
I miss that so much.
And any other highlights or lowlights, Hannah?
I think the highlight was I was a little bit nervous because Toby, let's just say he's quite a highly strung individual, and so sometimes the best laid plans to have a lovely time as a family don't quite work out, but actually in this case it really did, and we just had the most lovely Christmas period, seeing friends and family and spending time together, and it was just fantastic. Lowlights, I honestly don't think we had any. It was just really lovely. I was a little bit nervous about how I'd feel about not indulging in the fillet steak on Christmas Day with my recent turn to vegetarianism. But actually, I probably, well, in my opinion, had the nicest meal at the table. And yeah, it was just really, really nice.
What was on the menu for you then on Christmas Day?
I went for a mushroom, like a mushroom phyllo pastry sort of thing, and it probably sounds pretty awful, but it's absolutely delicious. It's from Marks and Spencer's, and it was this mushroom pastry thing, and then dauphinoise potatoes and some cranberry sauce, and it was just absolutely lovely.
Sounds good to me. So Simon, your daughter's actually just celebrated a birthday, hasn't she? So how old is she now, and how was her Christmas?
So she's just turned 5 3 days ago. So she was obviously 4 at Christmas time. And we had quite a relatively quiet Christmas. My parents and my sister and her family live in the next door town. So there's no real going away for Christmas. We just kind of go over to that town for just Christmas Day. And also my other half's from New Zealand. There's no kind of trying to go to the other half's relatives as well. So that's all taken care of. And it's funny, this year was the first Christmas I've noticed my daughter getting really excited. And I think it's about being at school, and it's just so much build up in December about, Christmas is coming and these are the Christmas things, and we're doing the nativity play and all sorts of other Christmas themed things happening. And it was, basically my daughter's been not hyper. She's not really hyper kid, but she's been very excited since early December, and now it's still going because she's obviously then after Christmas, it's her birthday, and her birthday just happened, but actually the party is this coming weekend. So we're looking forward to after this weekend that the hopefully the excitement will die down.
And any particular highlights or lowlights from your perspective?
The highlights are quite generic, really, but important. It was spending time as a family, my wife and our daughter, together for an extended period, just at home, just kind of hanging out, a few little country walks and that kind of thing, and just just like the whole Christmas aesthetic, having the kind of Christmas tree and the Christmas lights, and it's just a really nice sort of comforting environment to be in.
Our kids are quite similar, actually. They get all wrapped up in all the lights and the decorations and the presents, and as you say, actually the excitement does build when you're involved in lots of school stuff like nativity plays and Christmas concerts and all this kind of stuff. So it does build up over several weeks, doesn't it? And
yes,
and I guess for us, the fun of Christmas is, it is all about seeing the magic through the kids' eyes. Now, our kids are 9, 6, and 4.5, and from my perspective, it was great to have the best part of 2 weeks off work, spending time with them, not having 1,000,001 things planned. And actually, I guess the highlight for me was the fact that this year was almost felt like a bonus year. So Isaac turned 9 3 weeks before Christmas, and yet all 3 kids still just about believe in Santa. And so, all that excitement of coming down and, seeing the presents under the tree, and they were all genuinely delighted. And that wasn't something that we thought we'd get away with this year with Isaac being 9, but we did. And I suspect it probably is the last time that will happen. And then I guess the low light for me would have been Christmas Eve night, when the kids basically took it in turns to be awake most of the nights. Now, traditionally what we do is we hang up their stockings at the end of their beds and have their big presents under the tree, which was quite difficult to do with one of them awake for most of the night. And just when we thought they'd all gone to sleep, my wife tiptoed into the boys' bedroom at about 3 a.m. and Toby sat up and woke up just as she was doing it. So it gave her a bit of a fright. And actually, we thought, oh God, that's it. But Toby woke up the following morning, didn't remember a thing. So we got away with it just this one last time. Before we move on, did anyone create any new family traditions this year? Because that's something that we find that we often do at Christmas. We find something new that becomes part of our routine. So did anyone do anything interesting?
Well, I would say, as I've said before, I'm a movie fan, and one of the traditions we have as a family, well, really, it's my wife and I, is and this is actually motivated by her, not me, which may be surprising, is we watch Die Hard every Christmas Eve. Yeah, she's not really into It's a Wonderful Life or anything like that, but yeah, Die Hard. I showed it to her, like our first Christmas together, actually. I showed it to her, and she was, "This is amazing, this is great." And every Christmas since, we've watched that. But one other thing I think might have become a tradition is it's the third year in a row we've done it. I've seen it at the cinema at Christmas time, because our local cinema is a beautiful Art Deco cinema. Every Christmas show Singing in the Rain. This year was kind of especially poignant because Debbie Reynolds, who's the star of it, and obviously Carrie Fisher's mother just died. But my daughter loves the film, and she has done for a while. And we went to see it last Christmas at the cinema, and then this year we've done it too. And it's a film I absolutely adore, and I love the idea of that becoming a Christmas tradition.
Yeah, it's such a lovely film as well. And going back to Die Hard, I will have no arguments about this. Die Hard is a proper Christmas film.
Absolutely.
So yeah, now I guess with us we recently started doing. Well, actually, we started doing it last year, so this was the second year in a row that we did it. And I guess 2 years in a row counts as a tradition, doesn't it? So what we do now is we sit with the kids on Christmas Eve, and with each of them we choose a charity to which we make an online donation. Now, I can't take any of the credit for this. It was my wife's idea, but actually I really like it because it reminds the kids that Christmas is as much about giving as it is about receiving. And it means that we don't forget that there are many, many people out there who are less fortunate than us, which sometimes the kids in their excitement on Christmas morning when there's wrapping paper flying all over the place can easily forget that. So yeah, that's a new tradition for us that hopefully I think we'll try to carry on in future years.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So that was a quick overview of our 2016 Christmases. Only 50 more weeks until the next one. So that was the year that was 2016. And in many respects, it was a year full of lowlights rather than highlights. But we're not going to dwell on that. After all, the likes of Charlie Brooker have covered that in far more comprehensive and humorous fashion than we could ever manage. So instead, we're going to do a quick round table of our personal highlights of 2016. So in turn, I'm going to ask you guys for two highlights, one blogging related and one personal or family related. So let's start first with our blogging highlights. So tell us what yours is and briefly why it was so great. So Mark, let's kick off with you.
I've been writing about the kids for 14 years now, every week. So a highlight every year is just producing the content every single week, keeping it going consistently. The blogging highlight was probably the trip I did with Alex on the Pennine Way. Managing to blog about that while I was doing it, particularly when I fell in the swamp or the bog and walked a mile on the Pennine Way in my underpants while I was drying out. That was probably the big highlight for me. Possibly not for Alex, as he had to walk behind me and take photographs, but definitely my highlight.
Hannah, what about you?
I think I didn't really have any grand plans for the blog in 2016. I was rather more focused on having a baby and getting my business up and running. But I think because I didn't have too much pressure on myself, I actually feel like I'm a lot more confident with my writing style now. So I've done a lot more in the way of opinion pieces and current affairs, reaction to all of the things that happened last year, of which there are just too many to go into in one podcast. But I really feel like I'm a lot more confident in expressing my views, and I found my voice, so to speak.
Cool. And Simon, what's your highlight from a blogging perspective?
My blogging highlight was, I think, being approached by the Institute for Engineering and Technology, IET, and they wanted me to be part of their campaign to highlight the the lack of female engineers, and they're kind of taking it back to childhood, to girls and STEM, and the kind of way things are basically the stuff I talk about in the blog all the time. And they somehow came across my blogs or something like that, and they wanted me to be part of their campaign, and I was part of their releases and part of an article in the Guardian, and I was asked to be on BBC Breakfast, which I couldn't because I actually did the school run, but it was just really kind of out of the blue, and just really nice to have the kind of things I've been writing about be picked up by an organisation like that. It's just really nice to be recognised.
I guess for me, my blogging highlight is in a similar vein. I think for me in the past year, it's opened up a whole host of new experiences that have, I guess, dragged me way out of my comfort zone, but in a good way. I've been interviewed on radio, which is something that I was absolutely terrified of doing beforehand. I sang live in front of a packed room at not one but two blogging conferences, and I presented a session at a conference too. I mean, all of those are things that I never thought I would do. And for someone who is hugely shy and has always felt really awkward and lacked confidence in any kind of social situation, that's been massive for me. And now, what about our more personal highlights? So this can be about you or your family. So Simon, let's start with you.
Well, there's two really that stand out. One was we took a trip back to New Zealand at the tail end of our winter, so it was a nice bit of winter sun as well. But it was just really nice to go back. We left New Zealand because I was getting increasingly unhappy, feeling isolated from Britain, and it was kind of difficult to see the country for what it was in itself at times. And it was just lovely to go back and just to have a really great experience in New Zealand and see all our friends and hang out. So that was great. And a kind of a different highlight was our daughter started school. And, it's always a nervous thing to see how they react. And she absolutely loves it. She's just having a great time. She was kind of essentially reading within weeks, which was something that really surprised us, just how quickly she's taken to everything and making friends. There's never been one day where she's not wanted to go to school. And often she's, raring to go and running off ahead of me. So that's been really lovely.
Yeah, and that's brilliant when they really take to school, isn't it? Because you see the development in those early months move so quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Mark, how about you?
Well, Dan graduated from Cambridge, so I guess for any parent that's a pretty significant highlight. And I followed 0% of the graduation ceremony in Latin. It shows I didn't pay much attention at school. Doing the Pennine Way with Alex, 90 miles in 5 days, that was fantastic. Those are probably the two things. Oh, and my daughter graduated as well, unless I need a black eye. I better remember that. So those are the three things that stand out for me during the year.
Oh, that's very, very equitable of you.
Yeah. I've managed to get all three children in there, didn't I? That was really a good bit of parenting there.
Well, I'm going to go completely against that now because for me, I was going to say starting a new job, but actually to single out one of our kids, I think the highlight for me has been watching our middle child, Toby, really blossom. Now the poor kid, he's the quiet one in amongst two non-stop chatterboxes, and he's always struggled from all the archetypal problems of being a middle child, but this year he's really come out of his shell. I mean, he's doing well at school and enjoying it, and similar to your daughter, Simon, I think starting school was almost the making of him. He went from being really dubious about it to actually loving it from the very early days, and he's come on in leaps and bounds ever since. He's always been the creative one of our three, and that's really manifesting itself in a number of ways now. And while he still has his moments where, like any kid, he whinges and he doesn't want to leave the house or, whatever, he's become much more mellow, much more enthusiastic about stuff, more helpful and considerate, and basically actually just he's become a really fun kid to be around. He still gets bossed around mercilessly by his little sister though, but you can't have everything. So those were our 2016 highlights, and hopefully 2017 will see even more of the same. So finally, let's look forward to 2017. So for starters, does anyone make New Year's resolutions?
Nope.
No, not particularly anyway.
No, I don't really, no.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't either. So any particular reasons why not?
I like to sort of assess things as I'm going along throughout the year, because things crop up in life and work and everything that you just don't expect. So I don't really want to pressure myself at the very beginning of the year. I just like to constantly be kind of reassessing my situation and evolving and seeing what crops up, really. Plus, I'm just not very organised.
Yeah, I think if something's worth changing, it's worth changing it at any point in the year. Not, it doesn't have to be at the start. So I think it's more prudent to try and identify those things on an ongoing basis if you feel the need to change something in your life, instead of just doing it at the start of a year when, you may do half a dozen all at once and they're probably all destined to fail because you're trying to do all these things at the same time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, if something's really worth doing, why wait until January?
New Year's resolutions. New Year's never been a particularly big time of year for me. I absolutely agree with everybody else that if something needs changing, it needs changing on July the 17th or August the 8th, nothing changes because you move into a new year. If you've got problems, you've still got problems on January the 1st. For me, it's about ongoing assessment. It's not about suddenly clicking your fingers on January the 1st.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the last couple of years, I've started to take a slightly different approach to New Year's resolutions or setting goals, or whatever you want to call it. I don't particularly wait until January. And I've always found that I get to the end of every year and I've barely scratched the surface of my to-do list. So why on earth would I want to add even more things to a list that I'm already hopelessly way behind on? So actually what I've tried to do the last couple of years is use the Christmas holiday to take stock a little bit and actually find things that I'll stop doing. All the things that get in the way of the things that you really, really want to do. I think it's one of the generic diseases of being a blogger as well, is that there's always 100 things to do, and actually why fail at 100 things when you can do 10 things really well?
Can you? That's brilliant, Tim. Tell me how to do 10 things really well.
Yeah, when I find a solution to that, you'll be the second to know after I publish the book. Has anyone got any big plans for for the year or for this month or ongoing?
I have to pick a school for Toby, and that's just crazy. He's so tiny, he's so little. So we've got to, apparently it's a bulge year in our area, and school places are going to be tight, and most of the schools around us are very small, villagey type. So Phil and I have basically got to start looking around now, and we then apply in November, and that's just mental. I can't get my head around it. He's just turned 2.5 and I can't cope with it.
We're on to that next hurdle now with Isaac being in or coming towards the end of year 4 at the end of this academic year. It's time for us to start thinking about secondary schools, and that's something I can't get my head around either. So Simon, how about you? Any particular plans?
Not really. I think it was towards the tail end of last year. I was getting more kind of sponsored work, and it's just trying to explore ways I can do that without compromising too much the integrity of the blog, and it's always an interesting challenge to try and work that in there. But it's been going well in terms of brands approaching, and when you're getting more confidence, you're able to up your rate and they say yes, that's always good. There's no big plans, but just seeing how I can get that to progress, because I'm a stay-at-home parent. This is, in terms of my income, this is what I bring to the table at the moment. So if I can increase that, then that's all good for us.
And Mark, how about you?
Well, it's a big year for us because Alex goes to university in September. So for the first time in 13 years, we won't have a teenager in the next bedroom. So we thought we might have sex around September time. We're looking forward to that. But it's my last year as a parent blogger, effectively, as a dad blogger. Alex is away. Really difficult to generate content when you've got no kids left at home. So that'll be a big change for me. I've got some plans to replace the blog, but I'm not entirely sure what I'll do yet. But I shall have to do that because I have to produce some content every week for the sake of my mental health.
I guess my plan for 2017 is sort of the plan that I completely failed to get off the ground in 2016, which is to actually make some inroads into my own book. I've put it on hold for the first 6 months of this year while I've got a number of other projects to attend to. But come the end of the summer holidays, that's crunch time for me. So I'm hoping to really blitz it over the second half of the year. So I'll get back to you all on that one. So those are some of our plans for 2017. So here's hoping it's a good year for us and for you, obviously. So as long as I don't get abused by Donald Trump on Twitter, and let's face it, the number of people who haven't yet been is growing ever smaller by the minute. That will be a pretty decent start to the year for me. So before we go, has anyone been up to anything in particular the past week or two since Christmas? So Simon?
Our daughter's birthday on Saturday, so that was we had the smaller family party, and then on Sunday we took her to her first ballet, which was the Red Shoes at Sadler's Wells, and it shows how much of a stickler for rules I am. We were looking ahead to book it, and it said in the notes that please no children under the age of 5. So instead of booking in December when he could have done, I waited until our daughter was 5. So I wasn't breaking any rules, and we could go in and watch it without fear of being chucked out.
Mark, how about you?
Over the past week, the big thing for me is talking of books. I'm trying to write this book about the trip on the Pennine Way with Alex. I had a meeting with the Yorkshire Dales organisation, who are very keen to help me promote it when it's written. So there's pressure to get it written, Tim.
And finally, Hannah, how about you?
Not been up to loads, really. Toby, we've had to try and convince him that there is not unlimited supply of chocolate in the house.
Isn't there?
No, there definitely isn't, except once the children are in bed, and then miraculously the chocolate appears. But no, it really has just been sort of trying to get back into normal routine. So Toby started back at nursery, and he went back to his gymnastic sessions on Saturday just gone. And I'm going to be signing up for a gym that I went to look around, which has a creche. So basically I'm going to the gym, I'm joining a gym purely so that I can put Martha in a creche and then sit in their cafe and use their Wi-Fi.
Now that sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
So as for me, aside from the usual having to drag myself back to work and contending with all 3 kids' sudden obsession with the Pitch Perfect films, no idea where that came from, I've booked my ticket for my first blogging conference of the year. So I'll be heading up to Blog on MSI in Manchester in May. Now, I actually went to this for the first time last September and presented a session, and actually enjoyed my day enormously. So I will be back there again in May. It's nice to have something to look forward to in these kind of dark, cold January days, and I'm going to be presenting another session again this time. So more on that closer to the event, maybe. And that's it for another episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We will be back next week, but in the meantime, here's where you can find us all online.
I'm at Budding Smiles on social media, and my blog is buddingsmiles.co.uk.
And Mark?
The blog is bestdadicanbe.com, and Twitter, it's at bestdadicanbe.
And Simon?
My blog is manversuspink.com, man vs pink, and it's the same handle for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever other social media networks I've signed up to and I've forgotten. It's all man vs pink.
And I'm at Thatcham Dad on social media, and my blog is slouchingtowardsthatcham.com. So you can download this podcast on iTunes and Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. Do please give us a follow on Twitter at Parents Podcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thanks very much for listening, and do please join us again next week. So from all of us, good night.